I want you to understand why it's not smart to trust in your own ability to choose. Let me clarify what I mean. I mean that it's not wise to trust completely and entirely in your ability to choose. You can trust in it to a degree. Let's talk about that degree. It's because your own ability to choose is limited. One of my favorite scenes or quotations from a movie is from an old movie called, I think it's The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, with Clint Eastwood. It's an old spaghetti western. If it's not The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, then it's one of the other movies made in that similar genre, where Clint Eastwood wisely says several times throughout the movie that a man has got to know his limitations. And it's true, because when a man or a woman or a human being, period, doesn't know their limitations, then they will think they can exceed those limitations. And when anything exceeds its limitations, then it's going to break. It's like if a scale is rated to a certain weight and the weight limit on that scale is exceeded, the scale is going to break. It's just the laws of physics. Um, the laws are the same for a person's soul, right? And a person's ability. If a person exceeds their own ability, their inherent ability, then they're going to break. It's just very logical. So, understanding that our ability to choose as human beings is limited. There comes a point that is the limits of our ability to choose, and beyond that, our ability to choose will fail us. Okay? So, when that happens, if you're trusting in yourself and your ability to choose, and circumstances in your life require more strength or more goodness or more ability or more knowledge or more wisdom than you have in your ability to choose, then you're going to break and it's going to be rather painful. So I had to learn this lesson the hard way, as a lot of us do. So I trusted in my own ability to choose for the majority of my life. And then when the circumstances in my life demanded more than I had in my own ability to choose, the results were highly unpleasant. Highly unpleasant. And there are many people in the world who have reached this point and gone beyond it and have had to learn the hard way. There's plenty of people in jail. There's plenty of people who have died. There's plenty of people who have broken their bodies, their minds, their souls. Other people's hurt other people. All kinds of brokenness and all kinds of pain in the world results from people exceeding their own personal limitations because they don't know about them. They are not aware of their own limitations. And they exceed them, and either they themselves get hurt or the people around them get hurt, or both. Life is made up of and full of things that exceed our ability as human beings, and that exceed our strength, that exceed our goodness, that exceed our ability, that exceed our knowledge, that exceed our wisdom, that exceed our righteousness, infinitely beyond us. Why? Because reality itself, existence itself, is a product of a infinite God who created it all. So there are things in life and existence that are that exceed our ability and our knowledge and our experience and our strength and our righteousness and our goodness and all those things, okay? So to exist in this life, we all need power greater than our own limited power. Pure logic. is what that is. That's why the Bible instructs us not to trust in ourselves. You can know yourself and understand yourself and like yourself and be comfortable with yourself and value yourself and treat yourself well and love yourself and all these things. But you can have a reasonable degree of trust in yourself if it's done within the bounds of reality, right? If you know, okay, this is how God made me, I can trust that I know how to fix this car over here if you're a mechanic, right? And it's okay to tell that to other people. You can say, because I know myself, I know I can fix a transmission, then it's okay to say, hey, I know I can fix a transmission. That's within my ability and my limits, right? So that's not pride, that's reality. But it's when you step over and across your limits and say, well, something that exceeds your limits. You say, well, I can fix any car in the whole world and I can make it fly and I can make it run on, air, all these things, anything that exceeds your limits, right? That's when you can't trust in yourself. So it's okay to have a reasonable degree of trust in yourself, but to ultimately trust in yourself is not wise because, why? Because you're limited, okay? It's not saying that you're a worthless piece of dirt. All it's saying is that to know your limitations. And when you know your limitations, you realize that because you are a limited being, you need to trust in something stronger than yourself, right? Which logically speaking is God. Max, come here, Max. Come say hi. Come say hi to everybody. Hold on, I want to get Max up here. Come on. Come on, Max. Come on. Come say hi, Max. Say hi, Max. Look in the camera. Max. Say hi, Max. Max. Say hi, Max. Okay. Max said hi. This is why I really appreciate that line in that movie, Max, come be in the video, where Clint Eastwood, he doesn't hardly talk in the whole movie. That's typical Clint Eastwood. But the one line that he says several times throughout the movie, after somebody gets hurt or worse, is he gets his eyes all squinted up and he's got his hat on, he's looking like that, he goes, a man's got to know his limitations. And it makes a great Western and a great one-liner in a movie, but it's true. It's really true. If a person doesn't know their limitations, then once the circumstances in their life call for more strength, more ability, more wisdom, more righteousness, more goodness, more anything that might be required in those circumstances, and that person, those circumstances require this much, and the person's limit is here, and the person thinks that they can do it, the laws of physics and other laws kick in, and bam, people get hurt. So that's why I want you in life to just understand this very simple truth, that a person needs to understand their limitations. And it's not a pride thing or an ego thing, it's just the truth, right? It can be that people exceed their limitations out of pride, which is not smart, which is what I did. It's always the choir preaching on this channel. How do you think we learned this stuff, right? Well, God teaches. I always learn it through experience. So, I forget the point, but the point is that I want you to understand. Oh, right. I want you to understand it. And the point is that pride can be a factor that causes people to go beyond their limitations and get hurt. So, humility, a good definition of humility, is simply knowing the truth and knowing your limitations. Um, you know, people might say, you'll hear people talk about themselves, and it might sound like they're bragging, or it might sound like they're being self deprecating, or it might sound like neither. But the important thing is whether what they are saying or not is true. If a person says, well, I can lift 600 pounds, and they can, then that's not pride. If a person says, I can lift 600 pounds, and they can only lift 400, and they don't know it, that is called assumption or presumption, and that can still hurt them, but it's not pride. If a person knows they can only lift 400, and they say, oh, I can lift 600, that's pride. You know, pride can definitely get you hurt. Pride is thinking that you have more ability than you have, that you have more goodness than you actually have, that you have more righteousness than you actually have, that you have more wisdom than you actually have, that you are anything more than what you truly are. That's all. I wouldn't say that's all pride is, but that's one very practical definition of pride. So, the point that I'm wanting to make in this video, well, there's a lot of points, but one of the main points that I wanted to make is that your ability to choose is not the be-all, end-all when it comes to your life. Your ability to choose is a very important part of your life, but your ability to choose is not the strongest thing in life. A person's ability to choose is not the greatest thing in their lives. I have heard many times people say that it's all about choices. But they're wrong. It's not all about choices. It is very much about choices, but it's not all about choices. Why? Because your ability to choose is limited. Just like your physical strength is limited, your mental strength is limited, your spiritual strength is limited, your goodness is limited. Everything in your life is limited because you're a human being. Okay? So your ability to choose is limited as well. So to say that your ability to choose is the ultimate thing in your life and the ultimate power in life is not true. The ultimate power in life is God and Christ and their Spirit. They are much stronger than your ability to choose. They are much more good than your ability to choose. They have more wisdom than you using in your ability to choose. They being the creators and sustainers of all things and all life, are infinite in everything good. They are infinite in goodness, strength, righteousness, wisdom, understanding, ability, you name it. Anything good and necessary for all of life and existence, they are infinite in those things because they are unlimited. So, to trust in your own ability to choose is not wise. You can value your ability to choose and be a good steward of it. That is wise, and you can use it because God gave it to you, but don't exalt it beyond what it deserves. That analogy of being able to fix a transmission but not being able to make a car fly and run on air, if you use that same analogy in regards to your own goodness, your ability to be good, well, it's pure logic to realize that our ability to be good as human beings is limited, right? We can only be good to a certain degree. It's when we are confronted with the fact that our own goodness is limited is the point at which we realize we need God, right? Because none of us are that good on our own. Goodbye, Max. Bye, Max. Say bye, Max. That's what happened to me is I learned the limits of my goodness. And it was a very unpleasant experience. And this is strictly opinion, but I believe that this is the reason why God put the tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden. Again, I don't know if it was a literal tree, I don't know if it was a metaphorical tree. I'm not that smart. But what I do know is that the principle that it's teaching us is true. So I believe that the reason why he put that tree of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden was to teach us not to trust in our ability to choose. And I believe that this is what the Apostle Paul was alluding to when he talked about what he called will worship in the 2nd chapter of Colossians. Because our ability to choose can get us in trouble. He certainly created us with the ability to choose, and it's a beautiful, wonderful thing, but we're not supposed to trust in it. Ultimately, we are to trust in Him.